You've been running the same program for 2,847 days. Every morning you tell yourself, today will be different. Every evening you collapse into the same patterns, the same excuses, the same quiet desperation disguised as contentment. The self-improvement industry has sold you a lie. They promised you that willpower would save you, that motivation would sustain you, that if you just tried harder, wanted it more, pushed through the resistance, you would finally become the person you're meant to be. But here's what they don't tell you. Willpower is a finite resource that runs out precisely when you need it most. It's a cruel joke, a biological limitation dressed up as a moral failing. Michel Foucault understood something that your favorite productivity guru never will. He saw that the real power isn't in forcing yourself to change through brute mental force. The real power lies in architecting your existence so that self-improvement becomes as natural and inevitable as breathing. In the next few minutes, you won't just learn how to make personal development effortless. You'll discover how to transform your entire relationship with discipline, routine, and growth. You'll walk away with a completely different understanding of what it means to have power over your own life. Right now, you're probably thinking this sounds too good to be true. Your mind is already preparing its familiar defense mechanisms, the same ones that have kept you trapped in mediocrity for years. But notice something. That resistance you're feeling isn't actually you. It's the program running, the same one that's been running for 2,847 days. It's the voice that whispers, "This won't work for me," before you've even tried. You've been living in what Foucault would call a disciplinary society, but you've misunderstood which direction the discipline flows. You think the world is disciplining you, forcing you into submission, but the truth is far more sinister and far more liberating. You are the warden of your own prison. Every day, you wake up and choose to remain the same person, trapped in the same routines, the same mental patterns, the same emotional reactions. You've become an expert at your own incarceration. The beautiful horror of this realization is that if you built the prison, you hold the keys. But most people never find the keys because they're looking in the wrong place. They're looking for motivation when they should be looking for architecture. Foucault wrote about the technologies of the self, systematic practices that shape who you become, not through force but through design, not through willpower but through what he called the aesthetics of existence. Think about your current morning routine. What does it actually look like? Not what you tell people it looks like, not what you wish it looked like. What actually happens in those first 30 minutes after you wake up? Write it down right now. Get a piece of paper or open your phone and document exactly what you did this morning from the moment you opened your eyes. Don't edit it. Don't make it sound better than it was. Just write the truth. Look at what you've written. This is your current technology of the self. This is the system that's creating who you are, day after day, choice by choice, moment by moment. Most people's morning routine is a masterclass in self-sabotage. They wake up and immediately check their phone, flooding their brain with other people's priorities, other people's emergencies, other people's carefully curated highlight reels. They stumble to the kitchen and consume whatever's convenient, not what nourishes them. They rush through their preparations, always slightly behind, always slightly stressed, always slightly reactive rather than intentional. By 9 a.m., they've already lost the day. They've trained their nervous system to expect chaos, to crave stimulation, to operate from a place of scarcity and urgency rather than abundance and calm. But here's what Foucault understood that changes everything. You are not optimizing your life is optimizing you. Every routine, every habit, every repeated action is molding you into a particular kind of person. The question isn't whether you're being shaped. You are being shaped every moment of every day. The question is whether you're being shaped intentionally or accidentally. Right now, you're being shaped accidentally. Your environment is more powerful than your willpower. Your systems are more influential than your goals. Your daily rituals are more transformative than your yearly resolutions. This is why New Year's resolutions fail. This is why most diets fail. This is why most attempts at self-improvement crumble within weeks. You're trying to change outcomes without changing the systems that create those outcomes. You're trying to be a different person while living in the same environment, following the same routines, exposing yourself to the same influences. It's like trying to get clean water from a polluted well. Foucault called this the care of the self, the understanding that you are both the sculptor and the sculpture, the architect and the building, the programmer and the program. But most people never take responsibility for their own programming. They live as if they're victims of their circumstances, their genetics, their past, their environment. They abdicate the most fundamental power any human being possesses, the power to design their own existence. You've been waiting for motivation to strike, for the perfect moment, for the right mood, for the stars to align. But motivation is a fair weather friend. It shows up when you don't need it and disappears when you do. The people who seem to have superhuman discipline don't have better willpower than you. They have better systems. They've designed their lives so that the right choices are easier than the wrong ones. They've created what Foucault would call technologies of discipline, but not the oppressive kind you've been taught to fear. These are technologies of self-liberation, systems that free you from the tyranny of constant decision-making. When you have to decide whether to work out every single day, you'll eventually decide not to. When working out is simply what you do on Tuesday at 6 a.m., the same way you brush your teeth, the decision has already been made. The goal isn't to develop more willpower. The goal is to make willpower irrelevant. The goal is to create a life where the right choices happen automatically, where growth becomes your default setting, where self-improvement becomes as natural as breathing. This is the secret that Foucault discovered in his study of ancient Greek and Roman philosophers. They didn't rely on motivation or willpower. They relied on what he called practices of the self, systematic, repeatable, elegantly designed routines that shaped them into the people they wanted to become. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. You're about to discover that everything you think you know about self-discipline is backwards. Stop reading for a moment. Look around the room you're in right now. Notice 3 objects within arm's reach. Now ask yourself, did you consciously choose to put those objects there, or did they just appear? Most of your environment exists without your conscious design. Your environment is programming you every second of every day. That pile of clothes on the chair is programming you for disorder. That empty water bottle on your desk is programming you for neglect. The books you can see are programming you either for growth or stagnation, depending on whether you actually read them or just display them as intellectual decoration. Foucault called this disciplinary power, but not the kind that oppresses you, the kind that you can harness to liberate yourself from the chaos of constant decision-making. Right now, your environment is probably optimized for consumption, not creation, for reaction, not intention, for comfort, not growth. Walk to your kitchen, open your refrigerator, look inside without judgment, just observation. What story does the contents tell about who you're becoming? Is it the refrigerator of someone who values their body as a temple? Or someone who treats their body as a convenience store? This isn't about shame, this is about recognition. You are being shaped by forces you haven't consciously designed. Your phone is within 3 feet of you right now, isn't it? How many times did you check it today? Don't guess, your phone knows. Go look at your screen time statistics. That number you just saw? That's how many times you voluntarily interrupted your own consciousness today. That's how many times you chose distraction over presence. But here's the beautiful part. If you can see the system, you can redesign the system. Foucault studied how ancient philosophers created what he called techniques of the self, deliberate practices that sculpted their character like a master artist sculpts marble. They understood that you become what you repeatedly do, but more than that, you become what your environment repeatedly does to you. The Stoics didn't just think about virtue, they designed their entire day around practices that made virtue inevitable. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up each morning and hope he'd be wise. He had a systematic practice of writing that made wisdom his default mode of thinking. The difference between successful self-improvement and failed self-improvement isn't motivation, it's architecture. You need to become the architect of your own transformation, not through force, but through design. Think about your evening routine. What's the last thing you do before bed? For most people, it's staring at a screen, flooding their brain with blue light and other people's content. They're programming themselves for restless sleep, anxious thoughts, and reactive mornings. They're ending each day by reinforcing the very patterns they want to escape. But what if your evening routine was designed to create the person you want to become? What if those final 30 minutes of consciousness were invested in your own growth rather than someone else's entertainment? Take out your phone right now. Delete one app that's been stealing your attention. Not tomorrow, not after you finish this video. Right now. Notice the resistance. Notice how your mind immediately generates reasons why you need that app, why this isn't the right time, why you should think about it more. That resistance is the program running. It's the same program that's been running for 2,847 days. The app you just deleted was a technology of distraction. You're going to replace it with a technology of transformation. But first, you need to understand something that will disturb you. You're not just consuming content on your phone. Your phone is consuming you. Every notification is training your brain to crave interruption. Every scroll is teaching your nervous system that peace is boring. Every time you pick up your phone without a specific purpose, you're practicing the skill of being unconscious. You're getting better at distraction. Foucault would say, you're participating in your own subjugation. But the beautiful horror is that you can also participate in your own liberation. The same mechanisms that have been keeping you trapped can be reverse engineered to set you free. Instead of checking your phone first thing in the morning, what if you spent those same minutes in deliberate practice? Writing, reading, exercising, meditating. Instead of scrolling through other people's lives, what if you spent that time designing your own? The time is already there. The habits are already formed. You're just going to redirect them. This is what Foucault meant by the aesthetics of existence, turning your life into a work of art through deliberate, systematic practices. Not through willpower, through architecture, through design, through what he called technologies of the self. You're about to learn exactly how to build these technologies, but first you need to make a choice that will determine whether anything changes or whether you remain the same person you've been for 2,847 days. The choice is this: will you design your life, or will you let it design you? Because here's what's happening right now in this moment as you listen to these words. Your brain is fighting you, generating every possible reason why this won't work, why you're different, why your situation is special. That voice isn't wisdom. It's the warden of your prison, desperate to maintain control. Right now, stand up. Walk to the nearest mirror and look directly into your own eyes for 30 seconds without looking away. See that person staring back at you? That's the only person who can save you. Not your therapist, not your coach, not your family, not your friends. You. Foucault understood that true power begins with what he called self-surveillance. Not the oppressive kind, but the liberating kind. The kind where you become conscious of your own patterns, your own choices, your own responsibility. Most people avoid mirrors because they don't want to confront who they've become. They live in elaborate denial systems, always blaming external circumstances for internal failures. But transformation begins the moment you stop running from yourself and start designing yourself. Here's your first technology of the self: the 5-minute revolution. Every morning, before you touch your phone, before you speak to another human being, you're going to spend 5 minutes in deliberate self-creation. Not meditation, not journaling, not exercise. Those might come later. 5 minutes of pure intentionality. 5 minutes where you consciously choose who you're going to be today. You're going to ask yourself 3 questions. Who was I yesterday? Who do I want to be today? What's the smallest action I can take right now to bridge that gap? Write down the answers every single day. This isn't goal setting. This is identity architecture. You're literally programming your consciousness before the world has a chance to program it for you. Within 1 week, you'll notice something shifting. Your brain will start to anticipate this ritual. Within 1 month, you'll realize you've built a bridge between your sleeping self and your conscious self. But here's what will happen. On day 3 or 4, you'll want to skip it. You'll tell yourself you don't have time. It's not working. It's silly. That's the program running. That's your old identity fighting for survival. The moment you push through that resistance is the moment you discover your real power. Because willpower isn't about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. It's about designing a life where you naturally want to do the things that grow you. After your 5-menu revolution, you're going to implement what Foucault would call environmental discipline. Look at the space where you spend the most time. What is it optimizing you for? Remove 3 things that distract you. Add 1 thing that inspires you. This could be as simple as moving your phone charger out of your bedroom and putting a book on your nightstand instead. Small architectural changes create massive behavioral shifts because they work with your psychology instead of against it. Your environment is more powerful than your willpower. Design your environment to make good choices effortless and bad choices difficult. Next, you're going to create what I call ritual anchors. Specific times when specific behaviors happen automatically. Like 1 time of day, the same time every day, at that exact time, you'll do 1 specific thing that builds the person you want to become. Not 5 things, not when you feel like it. 1 thing, same time, every day. This is how you build what Foucault called disciplinary power over yourself, not through force, but through consistency. The ancient Greeks called this ascesis, systematic training of the self. They understood that excellence isn't an act, but a habit. You're going to become excellent at being yourself, the self you consciously choose, rather than the self that happens to you by accident. Here's the truth that will disturb you. Every single day you don't consciously design your life is designing you. Every scroll through social media is teaching you to seek validation outside yourself. Every postponed decision is training you to avoid responsibility. Every "I'll start tomorrow" is programming you for procrastination. You're becoming an expert at being mediocre. But you can become an expert at being extraordinary just as easily. It's the same amount of repetition, just pointed in a different direction. The people you admire, the ones who seem to have supernatural discipline, aren't superhuman. They've just designed their lives better. They've created systems where growth happens automatically, where the right choices are easier than the wrong ones. You're going to join them, not through motivation, but through architecture. Within 90 days of implementing these technologies of the self, people will start asking you, "What's different about you?" They'll notice something they can't quite name. You'll carry yourself differently. You'll speak with more conviction. You'll have a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're actively creating yourself rather than passively experiencing yourself. But the most profound change will be internal. You'll realize that you've been living as a victim of your own habits, when you could have been living as the architect of your own transformation. This is what Foucault calls the care of the self, the recognition that you are your own most important project. Not your career, not your relationships, not your possessions. You. The version of you that exists 90 days from now will look back at this moment as the turning point, the moment you stopped waiting for life to happen to you and started making life happen for you. But only if you begin, only if you choose architecture over motivation, design over willpower, systematic transformation over random hope. The program that's been running for 2,847 days is about to end. What program will you write to replace it? The person you become depends entirely on how you answer that question. Your transformation begins the moment you close this video and implement your first technology of the self. Not tomorrow, now.